8-mark question. So 6b. With reference to the information provided, examine 2 likely benefits for the Rwandan economy of growth in the country's population. So why growth of the population will benefit, and give me 2 separate benefits. So here, of course, whenever an 8-mark question asks the 2 likely benefits, usually we split it into 2 paragraphs. Main thing I want to show you again in this 8-mark question is I really want to emphasize how simple 8-mark questions are. The mark chain of analysis, remember, is 2, 2, 2, 2. So you have 2K, 2A, 2 analysis, then 2 evaluation. There's not much depth at all needed to pick up these 8 marks, and this question is an absolute killer. Go watch the 8-mark question video. It's a long time ago I filmed it, but very good video to show you how to be concise with these 8-mark questions, as it's an absolute killer in terms of time. As you know, Edexcel, the whole exam board is extremely time pressured with regards to economics. So for that 8-mark question, your technique needs to be solid. Firstly, to pick up the full marks. Secondly, not to waste too much time on it. So first thing first is asking us to refer to the information provided. We've had a look at, I believe, 2 of the figures. So let's have a look at this third figure, Rwandan, and then let's have a look at the extracts. So what is this third figure showing us? Essentially, quite simply, Rwandan's real GDP annual growth rate is fluctuating. It goes from around 6-ish% to around 9-ish%. So still growing on average, I'd say around 7%. So decent annual growth each year from 2008 to 2018. Therefore, let's have a read of this extract and see if there's anything we can use in our question. So straight away, let's talk about economic growth, which has been accompanied by substantial improvements in living standards, giving us a little start on the drop in child mortality. Of course, all things that contribute to living standards. Great start there. Absolute poverty declined from 59 to 39%. One definitely, of course, 8-mark question, you have 2 application marks, great ones to include. Then also another great one, Gini coefficient, it dropped from 5.2 to 0.43, of course representing a decrease in the levels of income inequality, which of course represents even more development. Okay, so the extracts are a bit of a waste of time with regards to this question. Of course, we need them for the figures, but there's no real points like we usually find for this 8-mark question. So now this of course would require you, this is why exam technique, exam practice is absolutely vital, as most of the questions you do, most of the points will be in the extracts, as if you watch the other exam technique videos, the other papers, lots of the points are in the extracts. But there are unique scenarios like this where there's not really, they're not directing you to a specific point. Therefore, of course, having that A-star content knowledge is also vital. So let's see what we're thinking with regards to this. So benefits of the Rwandan economy, benefits for the Rwandan economy of growth in the country's population. Firstly, let's just be really simple. Growth in the country's population means there's more people. If there's more people, how is this related to economics? It means there's more workers. So firstly, at least an increase or more/increase in workforce. So now, if there's increased size of the workforce, what does that mean for output? It means that there's more potential output. As for example, we have more factors of production. We have more labour. For example, if a restaurant had 5 workers before, they could maybe make 20 pizzas. But now if they have 7 chefs or 7 workers, they can maybe now make 27 pizzas. Therefore, increased potential output. And if you have an increase in the potential output, what does that mean? And if you think about the LRAS, LRS represents the productive capacity of the economy. So how much we can produce at full employment, how much we can produce at spare capacity. So if there's an increase in potential output, there will also be an increase in the productive capacity of the economy. And for this question, for this 8-mark question, you don't need to include the diagram, but if you really want to, it literally would take 2 seconds. You draw LRS, you draw a little AD curve, you draw LRS shifting out to LRS1. What does that show? Of course, if you zoom in a bit, it shows real GDP increasing from YE to Y1. And of course, how does that relate to the question? Let me just add real GDP, price level. How does that relate to the question? Because the question is, of course, asking about growth. How do you define growth? It's essentially just an increase in real GDP. So again, really easy, really simple way to make this all work. That's a great point for your first point. Let's think about a second point. So I think I'm still going to build on the workforce point. So I'm probably just going to build on this same point of basically more employment. So if there's an increased size of workforce, how also will that benefit the government? So I'm going to say more workers. And of course, the main thing the way I'm going to direct this chain of analysis is increase government tax revenue, since that is a massive benefit. And of course, why is that beneficial? Because they can allocate, if they have more tax revenue, they can allocate that to for example, supply side policies, increase growth in the economy, for example, infrastructure spending. But yeah, more workers, increase government tax revenue. Just going to give a bit more detail, E.G. income tax. And 100%, I won't just talk about income tax, talk about corporation tax. As for example, if there's more workers, again, it means that firms are producing more output. If they're producing more output, you can lead to increased sales, increased profits. If they're making more profits, therefore will lead to increased levels of corporation tax. Then you just talk about how basically the government can use that corporation tax, use that income tax, use the increase in government revenue to fund growth in the economy. So like I said, it's a very simple point about maybe they can spend on a supply side policy, whatever they want to spend on, thus improving the growth in the Rwandan economy. And that is only needed for the 6 marks. And now let's just do a really simple evaluation point to pick up those 2 marks. Of course, you would have to include application. The way my application is pretty much just talk about this figure. Of course, we've worked it out from 2011 to 2012. Population grew around, whatever you want to call it, 0.35 million. You pick any of the years that we've worked out. Of course, we found a little figure in this extract as well. So extract B, you talk about the absolute poverty rates declining. Maybe at the end of that last paragraph, we talk about they can spend on a supply side policy such as infrastructure spending or education spending. Thus, it led to positive effects for the Rwandan economy. As we saw, absolute poverty levels declined, Gini coefficient declined, thus indicating growth and development inside Rwanda. But yeah, 100%. Make sure to include those bits of application. Now, like I always say, it's 2 marks of evaluation here. Make sure you have a clear point. Does not need any sort of depth to it. Just a clear, straightforward point. You'll pick up the 2 marks. With regards to this question, I'd probably say how of an evaluation. This depends on the time lag. As for example, an increase in the country's population currently, it will take 20 years for these individuals, maybe 16, 15 years, for them to enter the workforce. Therefore, it depends on the time lag between the short run and the long run when these positive effects of an increase in the workforce are actually going to be felt, are going to be translated into the economy, which is a great point. As of course, it kind of says that the benefits of the increased workforce are delayed by about 20 years, as of course it takes 20 years for a human to grow up and start working. But also, of course, you only need one here, but just one that's popped into my mind is this figure we were speaking about. So absolute poverty declined from 59 to 39%. Yes, it's a great decline, obviously a 20%-ish decline, but 39% is still a substantial figure to be in absolute poverty. Therefore, you can evaluate this by saying, how of an evaluation, this depends on the levels of absolute poverty in Rwanda, as due to still relatively high levels of absolute poverty being 39%, this means lots of individuals will not have access to schooling, education, or high levels of schooling and education, thus meaning despite the population size increasing, the human capital, the skills acquired by these individuals will still be relatively low, thus limiting the levels of growth and development within Rwanda. And of course, these workers will be unproductive, they will not contribute to the economy, maybe even put a strain on the economy with things like benefits. But of course, yeah, really simple point, just keep it simple, straightforward. That's all I'd write for the A-mark question, just trying to give you guys as many ideas as possible, as of course, a massive thing most students come to me saying is that they don't know what to write for these questions. Be really simple, be really strategic, get your 2 simple paragraphs done, 1 evaluation point, move on, just be very transactional.